Hello beautiful souls, Avalon here, and I'm reviewing a tarot deck for you called the Bonefire Tarot. Not to be confused by Bonfire Tarot. Occasionally when I pronounce this tarot deck there is confusion, so I want to be very clear that it is bone fire, as in Beltane fires, the burying of the bones under the fires. It has a very pagan fire significance, and being that Beltane happens to be one of my favourite Sabbaths, as I'm sure it is one of many people's favorite Sabbaths, I really like the feel of this deck for that reason, for that bone fire, that fiery aspect of it. Now, this is a self-published deck, Australian-made self-published deck. The artist responsible for this deck is Gabby Angus West, and this is a heavily themed deck, and the theme by which I'm speaking of is vintage tattoo art. Now, if I'm being entirely truthful, when I first laid eyes on this deck, I did not like it. I actually thought that the images were a little bit grotesque. I came across it, well, it entered my sphere of consciousness while I was on the central coast of New South Wales purchasing the Seventh World Tarot, which is a Marseille-style deck, also Australian-made, self-published. And while I was there, I happened to be in at Avalon Within, at the entrance, and the lovely Jo, owner of that store, she showed me this. Now, I looked at it and I flicked through it, and it was her deck that I was actually looking at, and I just kind of went, nah. Felt that image, the imagery, and that the artwork was actually a little bit grotesque, and so I gave it back to her and I walked out. However, during the process of that time, the artwork and the colors and the symbolism of this deck actually made its way into my subconscious, and it stayed with me for about 5 days. I traveled in between that time, and eventually I just realized that I wasn't going to be able to shake this feeling. So I called up Jo and I said, can you please get me 2? Because I wanted one for my shop as well. And she moved mountains and she got it for me, and I'm so pleased that she did. Now, my hesitance to work with it initially was because I didn't vibe very well initially with the artwork. But once I sort of broke down the barriers there and I started using this card for daily draws and working with it every day, I was really, really surprised at how accurate, how good, how impressive this deck can be for readings. It is consequently the deck that I'm currently working with at the moment. I purchased this deck in April. I have been working with it for a few months. I've been carting it around with me everywhere, giving people readings with it, doing daily draws for my page, etc. And it does not disappoint. It just simply does not disappoint. So I'm incredibly impressed with it, its energy and its readability. So yes, it's a very feisty deck. Obviously fire being the predominant element throughout this deck, and I'm going to show you a few of the cards in a moment, sorry. But first I'll start off by showing you the packaging that it came in, which is really quirky. So this is a little black hand-stitched pouch, and it comes with a little ribbon that you tie around, tie at the front. Like I said, it's hand-stitched, and it has the little bonfire motif there, and that same motif is featured throughout the rest of the deck in the actual cards themselves. Sometimes really vibrantly as a feature, sometimes just like tucked away in the background, but it seems to be in every one of the cards. And this is a really good quality little pouch. I use it all the time. Obviously my deck lives in this pouch, and I pop it into my handbag and I take it with me everywhere. I'm one of those readers that never leaves home without a tarot deck in my possession, and I find this is really portable, and it does, like I said, cushion the cards really well. I'm very respectful of my tarot decks. I don't want them to get knocked around, so I wouldn't put them in something that I didn't trust would protect them. And an element of protection also comes from the cards themselves, because they are fantastic cardstock. I cannot emphasize that enough. I am incredibly impressed with the cardstock. It is so thick that it actually makes the deck, when the whole deck is piled together, is collated, it makes the deck look much thicker than it actually is. And just incredible quality. And I would love it if every tarot creator would lean towards this good quality of a cardstock, because I know that it makes the cards more durable. And if you are a professional reader, of course, or if you like using your cards every day, it's important to have a good quality deck made of good quality material, in my humble opinion. So yeah, very, very good quality deck. It is a bordered deck. It does have a border on it, and And I'll show you here, this is the intro card, so Bonefire, but see the border, it's very, yeah, it's very non-threatening. It doesn't detract from the image at all. This is the backing. This is a matte stock cardstock, so not glossy, smooth to touch, great to shuffle, etc. The backing of it, black and white, and they are a smaller card, so they're about I think 2 by 3 inches, so they're much smaller than a standard. This is the Chrysalis Tarot, and so if you see the size there, that is actually, there's a difference there. The Bonefire would actually be wider though, if you can see there. So not by much, but still wider, and it does feel that way. So I have tiny hands, so these are perfect for my tiny little baby hands. Great for shuffling, like I said before. Moves really well. The cards, no friction between them. Just fantastic for that. So I'm going to get in and show you the little white book, because it comes with a little white book. This is the quirkiest little white book I've ever seen. It is so poorly put together, and it's intended to be so poorly put together. It's all handwritten. It's unevenly mounted. So that is the front page, and that's the bottom of the second page. It's 48 pages long. It has, you know, a little bit of an introduction about the Bonefire Tarot, and then it has, you know, the other bits and bobs, but it's all sort of handwritten. It has your keywords. That's about it. Nothing incredibly special. So if you were buying this deck and it was your first tarot deck, or you were a beginner, you'd need subsequent material to help you with the learning of the cards themselves. It does follow a Rider-Waite-Smith structure. So if you have familiarity with the Rider-Waite-Smith system, then you know you'll have no problem getting to know these cards. And you know, they're a lot of fun to work with. So I'll start showing you some of the cards that I like, some that I don't like, and ones that I'm uncertain about. So I'm going to start with the ones that I don't like. And let me just be clear, when I say I don't like, it's not because I find that the card or the artwork is poorly done. I just find that I can't connect with that artwork. It doesn't work for me personally. So not on a totalitarian level, if that makes sense. So the first card is the Tower. All the imagery is sort of there, but I'm used to much more striking images of the Tower card. Now, on a plus side, sometimes the striking nature of the Tower card does kind of put people off or make people anxious or nervous. So this is much more gentle in that approach. So it leaves a lot to the imagination. But I like it to be a little bit more striking. I'm accustomed to seeing it more striking, so perhaps that's it. 10 of Coins, I find it to be a very lackluster card. Yeah, the image is there, everything's in full bloom, etc., etc. Earth, energy, flowers, harvest, you know, all the images, all the symbolism is there. I just don't like it. It doesn't really vibe well with me. Queen of Cups, I feel very sad for her. I think the Queen of Cups is usually such a so lovelily depicted in a lot of the decks that I was a little bit disappointed to see her looking so maladroit, I suppose. The Hierophant, which is my birth card. I thought for a heavily themed deck as this one, and it's a vintage tattoo art, if I didn't say that prior to, for a heavily themed deck like this, I would have expected the artist to take a more original approach to the Hierophant and to some of the other cards as well, I suppose. This is the World card, and I found it very unoriginal. I didn't feel like that symbolism was there. When I think the World card, I think, you know, a spherical view of it. Because when I think world, I think of our own planets, very spherical. And so I like to see it in that way. That's very much a personal preference, and but I don't think that this card delivered the World card. And the Emperor. This is the Emperor card, and he looks so dejected. He looks so sad. And the Emperor has such a strong presence for me as far as archetypes go. It's like social conditioning is, you know, one of his things. He has such an authoritative presence for me personally as I'm reading him throughout the Fool's Journey. Excuse me. And so I was a little bit disappointed to see him looking so sad. And so I guess disempowered is the word that I'm looking for. But yeah, so I wasn't incredibly impressed with those, if I'm being entirely truthful. This one here I'm unsure about, and it's the Queen of Swords, and I find that she looks like a skeleton. And while I'm okay with that as a depiction of the Queen of Swords in a reverse aspect, I don't necessarily appreciate it in an upright sense. But the colouring is really beautiful, and the rest of the imagery is interesting to me, to my eyes. So I was a little bit uncertain. There's some days that I look at it and I'm like, no. And there are other days I'm like, oh, you're kind of pretty. And that might actually have something to do with the girly colours that are coming through. Now, you probably can't see the colours as well as I can. But yeah, there's a soft kind of like pastel pink to it. So yeah. All right, now of the cards that I like, that I found really interesting, the section of cards, or the grouping of cards that I liked the most, was actually the Knights in this deck. And that is because it had a really strong elemental presence in each of the cards. And so I will show you the Knight of Wands, very fiery. See how the element itself is actually really exacerbated in this card. The Knight of Cups, very dreamy, very fluid, again, very much present, that element. The Knight of Swords, that is wind energy all around it. So again, elemental presence quite strong. And my absolute favorite of all knights is the Knight of Coins, which is a beautiful, vibrant green, and it has a little tortoise. Oh, hang on. It has a little tortoise in the bottom there. So very, very cute. Very, very cute. And I get it, being an earth sign, I know that slow and steady wins the race, hence the tortoise is there. And it's believed that the Knight of Pentacles moves the slowest, or probably he progresses slower than the others. So I kind of get that. I like it. So these are the ones that I really like. These are the cards that I really like. So the Devil. Now, the thing that drew me to the Devil was actually the chain that you can see there. So the little thing, you know, little horns and little cigarette butt out of her mouth kind of thing. She looks really dependent. She looks like an addict, if I'm being entirely truthful here, and she's chained to the Devil, and that was the deciding feature of that, whether I liked that card a lot or not. The Ace of Cups really has that cup runneth over feel to it. Very happy, very vibrant, very beautiful is the word for that one. Temperance, the knowing when you've had too much to drink, I feel, is definitely present in this one. The Eight of Coins, I like the dedicated artist in this. It's really, really pretty. Probably one of my favorite cards, along with Judgment, which is like awesome. Judgment is awesome. The faces of the lost souls, or those who are being judged, like etched in her face, in her pale, pale ghost-like face. Very intensely cool. The Fool. I like the Fool in many cards. Actually, it's one of the first cards that you see, and it's one of the cards that kind of gives me an insight into the feel of the actual deck. And so I always look to the Fool, and yeah, the Fool actually says a lot to me about how the deck itself is going to be. And I really like this one. Kind of like that woodland fairy, modern urban forest feel. So all of the Rider-Waite-Smith system symbolism for the Fool is actually injected into that card. So if you follow the Rider-Waite-Smith system, if I've already said this, I'm sorry, but if you follow that system, you'll have no issues. Five of Coins. Little Viking helmet present there. King of Coins, the one that makes me giggle the most. Look at those chubby cheeks. Look at that king sitting on his mound of possessions like a miser. Big fat cheeks, big fat belly, you know, just coveting his goodies. Very, very pleased with himself. It's comical. When I first looked at it, it had that cross between Father Christmas and the really fat, greedy guy. So, Six of Wands, this guy looks like a guru. Like a total new age guru. He has the third eye depicted in there, and I'm really attracted to images where the third eye is actually visibly present in the image itself. And another deck that actually has the third eye depicted in one of its cards is the Deviant Moon Borderless Edition, the Nine of Cups. I actually drew it today for today's daily draw, and my eye immediately went to that third eye on the forehead of the moon. It's a really cool deck as well. I might review it soon. The Three of Swords. It's a classic depiction, but very vibrant, very cool. The sad eyes in the background, the journey across water. I really like the elemental presence in that one as well. And the Queen of Wands, lastly. Very, 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 very interesting and vibrant and beautiful. Now, I really, really enjoy this deck a lot for readings. I've been reading with it a lot, and it gives the most intense readings. It allows me to pull out the interpretations with ease, with a slight sassiness. There is a kind of sharpness to it, but never a disrespect. It doesn't push me to be aggressive or disrespectful as I'm reading it. The energy is really, really good there. And super impressed with this deck for reading. Now, as you guys know, I like to associate crystals with my deck, as I do like associating incense with my decks as well. So when I first meditated with this deck, it called for blue tiger's eye, of which I had none. And the very next day, when I was out and about at the local shopping centre doing a grocery run, I ducked into this little shop, and there was this piece of blue tiger's eye, which is, I've mentioned before that I like the rough and the polished. That's the rough, and that's the beautiful polished side of blue tiger's eye. And I saw 2 pieces of this in their cabinet, and I went, oh my gosh, they were really, really cheap. And she's like, oh, they just came in this morning. And I was like, synchronicity. So it was meant to be. Now, blue tiger's eye might seem like a strange choice for this deck, especially because it is so fiery, it is so feisty. One would probably think Mexican fire agate or fire opal, or, you know, something amazing like that. But I feel that because of the heavy fire presence in this deck, I need something that helps to soothe it and communicate its lessons out clearly. And this does it. This is very, very grounding to me, and it works very well on my throat chakra, and it allows me to articulate the message with clarity, but also with wisdom and respect. So I pull down a lot of wisdom, you know, from source here. It's a great channeling and grounding stone for that. And I find that it works really well for me personally. For you, you might get something different, of course. And as far as incense go, I find patchouli and dragon's blood works really well. Now, I made an amazing incense to work with this deck shortly after I bought it, and it was patchouli, dragon's blood, and I have this mix of essential oils called Mind Power that was gifted to me for my birthday this year. And it's got a few, you know, interesting blends of oils within there. And I just put 1 or 2 drops in that, put it in mortar and pestle, gave it a really good bang. And when I burnt it, brilliant, brilliant. Just phenomenal. So I've had really good success with that. If you guys wanted to throw in some rose into that blend, if you're keen to try this for yourself, if you wanted to throw some rose into the blend, then by all means do so, because there is a very strong rose presence in this deck. Like, take for instance the Queen of Swords, roses there. The Emperor, roses there. I'm sure I could find roses somewhere else for you, but you get what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of roses in this deck. There is kind of like, here, look, King of Swords, roses. And I mean, I get it, because roses was a poignant theme or a symbol in vintage tattoo art back in the day. But yeah, so if you wanted to try that. Now, final words, great for path working. Makes for a really interesting trip to go into there and meet these characters that almost seem like alter egos. That's how I feel when I actually step into the card themselves. I always find path working with cards that have a border to be a lot easier for me, because I can imagine that border to be like an entry point, or like the architrave of a door, if that makes sense. I'm very fond of opening doors and walking through them, or walking through mirrors, but I like the frame. It helps me to visualize. And so I've had some really interesting experiences path working and meditating with these cards. So I highly recommend you try that out yourself if you haven't already. And tell me what you think as well, because if you own this deck already, I would love to exchange some information with you about it, or I would love to hear some of your wisdom and some of the ways that you've actually put the lessons of this deck to good use. Other than that, I highly recommend this deck for purchasing. It's a badass deck. if I was to describe it as a person, as a personality, I'm not necessarily sure that I could pick a character to properly articulate it, but I could paint you a picture. And it's definitely feminine. It feels feminine. A really beautiful woman in her late 20s to mid 30s, beautifully presented, very asymmetrical haircut, shiny hair, fierce glasses, wearing something very executive, but a full sleeve of tattoos under her, and a very edgy but professional way of speaking. And yeah, that kind of really, you know, kind of feels right for this as a personality. And on the weekends, that woman likes to get out there and fire twirl and, I don't know, work for Cirque du Soleil. But very, you know, very interesting personality this deck has. And it's important for me to mention also that, if I haven't said before, this is a self-published deck, and it actually did get top 10 tarot decks in the Eclectic Tarots list, and I think it might have been 2012. So rather recently, it wasn't too long ago that actually that happened. So I think it's a pretty big deal if you're a self-published tarot deck creator and your tarot deck makes it to the top 10 for that year on Eclectic Tarot. I think that's a real that's a real achievement. So congratulations to Gabby Angus West for that. And I hope you've enjoyed this tarot review. I've got more to come because you guys know what's going on, don't you? Gotta get through them. Much love, many blessings. Mwah.